Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where people can see your troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you, Ross? How are you, Arthur?
How are you, Ross? Nigel, who are you today? Are you Nigel or are you Russ?
I'm both. I'm split personalities.
It's common this time of year.
Well, I call
Yes,
you
it is.
Nigel. I'm calling you Nigel.
That's
Okay,
fine.
that's good.
Okay.
That's, his friends
Okay.
call him Nigel.
Yeah, except when I'm pushing the book, you know.
Oh, God alive.
Not that I want to do that, obviously. Oh, yes.
Oh.
You can play that, Jim.
I can't get mine out. There's so many of them here. I don't know. They're all over the place.
Oh, well, it's like a library there, isn't it?
Oh, it's
It
terrible.
is.
It is.
Yeah.
Right, so this will be our Halloween special, gentlemen.
Ooh.
So I thought we could share some spooky stories, some memories maybe of some spooky things that have happened to us, and all other things Halloween, really, maybe some books, the kind of films you like to watch this time of year, all that sort of stuff. So we got a bit of time. But what started this actually was something that I read on social media by you, Mr. Williams, which was a quite a spooky story about being in Brixton in the 1980s.
Yeah, that's it's funny that I've always denied any sort of belief in supernatural, and I've ended up writing about it. But when I think back at certain incidents, then it does sort of make me question my my refusal to believe in these things, because that particular occasion, when I worked in Brixton, I was there from 81 to 84, and we used to assemble in the meeting room, in the briefing room, which was down in the basement in Brixton Police Station. And you'd been there and you'd be sitting around in a sort of horseshoe shape with the sergeant or two sergeants and an inspector. And there'd be possibly anywhere between 30 and 50 PCs on duty. It was quite a busy place at that time. And you'd be given your beats. Perhaps you'd be allocated an area car, or you'd be given a particular role. Maybe in we had our own little radio control room there as well. So this particular occasion, I was allocated a beat, which I think was around Stockwell Park. It might have been one of the other parks, Brockwell Park or whatever in Brixton. And a good pal of mine was, who shall remain nameless, he was allocated the neighbouring beat to me. So what we used to do on a summer night shift was we'd walk for the majority of the time around the beat, because you'd have to report on any sort of lockups. If there was anything damaged, you'd make a note of something, go back and check it again a couple of hours later. And you basically had to know exactly what was going on the beat. And summers in London at that time always seemed to be hot. I don't know whether it was some sort of phenomenon when you try saying that after a few drinks, but they were always hot evenings or nights, even early hours of the morning. It was still warm, so we used to walk around in shirt sleeves. And this particular officer and I decided that we'd meet up on the road that sort of adjoined both beats. And we were strolling down this particular road, coming towards a disused church. And the church was all boarded up. There was sort of meshing all around it. The doors were boarded. The old stained glass windows had smashed and been smashed by kids throwing stones. And we both heard a woman singing. And this must have been about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was a beautiful soprano voice singing a hymn. And we both looked at each other and thought, well, hey, hang on, this is a bit odd. Perhaps squatters have gone up in the world and we're now singing arias in church. And we thought, well, since it was on the border of both our beats, we both better go and check it out, because I wasn't going to do it on my own. So we got through the fence. We could still hear the singing. It was coming from inside the church, and it was getting louder as we were approaching, as you'd expect it to be if there was someone in there. And we got to one of the side windows, and my pal went one side, I stayed the other, and we had a little peek in through the broken window, put the light on, could still hear the singing up to that point, put the light on, singing stopped, no one in there. So, and we were both convinced that it was coming from inside the church. So we had a little look around afterwards, no sign of any other sort of entry where somebody could have squeezed through and got into the church or anything. So we did what all brave police officers did. We ran in the opposite direction. And well, funny enough, I met up with him a couple of years ago in Amsterdam. He was an inspector on in the Met liaison inspector with not Interpol, Europol. And he's living out in Amsterdam now. So we met up, my wife and I and my daughter and his son. And we were talking about this over a few pints, as you do, and having a little laugh about it, and obviously putting it down to nonsense. But still remains that we couldn't actually explain what we heard that night.
Yeah, I mean that story's eerie. That is a
it was really eerie.
Yeah. That's really. What about you, Mr. Cole? Are you a Mulder or a Scully?
No, truth be told, I've never had any experiences like Nigel. You know, these sort of where I've been, especially in my police career, where I've been in a situation where something has happened, and I thought to myself, that can't be right. You know, that's like Nigel said about the Sopranos singing and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I suppose my frightening times was when I was growing up in Cairo.
Well, that most people, didn't it?
Sorry?
So that would have frightened most people.
Yeah, well, yeah, you mentioned Cairo, like, and it's you know, they go like this, don't they? You know, The Exorcist. But we had a picture house up in Cairo. It was called the Cozy, and it was built on the river. The river flowed underneath it. It flowed from the top of the colliery right down the river Llinvi, right under the river by the square, and down, obviously, down to Bridgend. And you can imagine in the 50s, there's my eldest brother Billy, Norman, and myself, because there's a gap between us and Michael, obviously. So my father would obviously take us to the pictures, you know, on a regular once a week, until we were able to go on our own, obviously. But it wasn't so bad with my father, because we'd walk like the half a mile down the road to the pictures with him, and we'd watch the pictures, whatever it was. And then we'd go over for a bag of chips in the fish and chip shop nearby. And then we walk up quietly up the road, no problem, back in the house. But obviously it changed a little bit then when we went on our own, obviously, because my brother Billy was a hell of a boy, and he loved the back lanes, my brother Billy did, for some reason, I don't know. And it was always sort of, yeah, we'd watch the film, and it could be any film. It was the time when Frankenstein and Dracula, they were very, very popular in the 50s. As you know, you go back, and black and white and real eerie music.
Organ player there?
No, we didn't have an organ player in the Cozy. What we basically had was rats. They'd hear them scurrying about when watching the film, like, you know what I mean? And they come across your lap, like, and you just go like that. Get off, you bastard. You know. So obviously we'd finish in the fish and chips in the pictures over the fish and chip, have a bag of chips, and then we only had to walk like 150 yards, and we come to the back lane, you just up the street, down the gully, and the back lane going right up to our house. It ran right up to our house. It did. No lights or nothing. And Billy take us down there, like, let's go down there, and you shit yourself, like, you just watched Christopher Lee having a steak for his art, and then all of a sudden you're down the back lane with Billy telling you these stories, like, and you'd be running hell for leather with your chips, like, and looking behind you, that type of thing. So I suppose in your mind as a youngster, what was on the silver screen basically came out with you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So like Nigel said, but I've never had any sort of in my poetry. Obviously, I've written a few sort of supernatural poems, where two war poems and one in the coal mines, obviously. But I've never had an experience like Nigel. Mind you, I think Nigel had been on the pop at the time. Did he tell you that?
No, he didn't bring that up.
Well, in the Met they were then. See, when they're on the beach.
All right, okay.
Yeah, they pop in, have a pint here and a pint there. So I know by the time he gets, but by the time he gets in the church, like, he's probably up to here, like, you know what I mean? They probably up to here, the pair of them, like, they're hearing all sorts of things. A soprano up the Met.
A soprano, yeah.
Up the Met. Never. Yeah.
Maybe somebody just kicked him really hard.
That's right. But my sort of things like that, and it's all in the mind, isn't it?
No. What are you trying to say?
What do you mean?
Well, it depends where you stand on the whole thing, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, do you believe in the afterlife? Do you believe it? I have moments of deja vu with Caroline, yeah? Something will happen. I said, I think I've seen that before. I'm sure I've sort of dreamt that. I don't know if you've ever been there, where you
get
subconsciously, I don't know what it is, but you're sitting down and you think, bloody hell, is this what I was sort of thinking about a couple of days ago? And it's as if it comes to life. So I think there's something there. There's no doubt about it. I'm not a disbeliever, don't get me wrong, but I've never ever had a thing like an incident like Nigel.
I have to say that I am of sound mind and body. Well, sound mind. Well, okay. I'd retract that. Yeah, cut that out.
Yeah.
My one of my favourite stories is about a friend of my parents, Philip Burnell, Nelly, they used to call him. And him and his wife and my parents, when my parents first got married, used to go to the pictures in Aberraman. And they went to see The Exorcist when it came out. Yeah. And I mean, at the time, it was terrifying, this film, you know. And they were walking back, and my parents lived in Fernhill at the time. So they went to Fernhill, and Nelly used to live at the Tint, the bottom end of Penrhyn Khyber. And when he went past Fernhill and you get to Glenboy, and there's the cemetery there, Mountain Ash Cemetery. And he had a few beers as well, you know, they'd had a good night out. And there was a bloke sat on the wall of the cemetery. And Nelly turned to this bloke and he said, "Oh, but," he said, "what time is it?" And the bloke sat on the wall of the cemetery, looked right at him and said, "Time to live in, we're in bed." Now, Nelly stopped running when he got to the Tint. Right? and he wore a St. Christopher every day for the rest of his life.
Yes, I can very well believe it. You know what I mean? It's like when we were running up in Cairo, you know what I mean? You're running hell for leather, like, with a bag of chips, like, you know what I mean? They go everywhere there, you know, and you're looking back like that, you know what I mean? And he's come in,
but that's the great thing,
He's come in with a steak in him, you know, that type of thing. It's in your head.
That's the great thing about scary stories. We love them, I think, because as kids we told them. We even tell them to our friends and things. But the great thing about it is that you can be scared in the safety of your home. You know that it's a story, it's a thrill. That's why we like watching them on TV, for example, or films in the cinema. You go there, you watch it, you get the jumps, you know, when they come along. But you know that it's just make-believe, and that you can go back to your normal lives. But I've got another one. This was about 1940, and this was told to me by my dad, who was not a believer in this sort of thing either. Or should I say, he was as much of a not believer in these sort of things as I am. So in other words, we say we don't, and yet there's always something in the back of our minds sort of negating that argument. Anyway, it must have been about 1940, during the Second World War. My dad was 7 at the time, and my grandfather hadn't gone off to fight because he was a collier, and he was one of the protected, whatever they call them, protected
industry
workers. Yeah, protected industries, where they had to remain and produce the coal for the war effort. So my grandfather and his brothers and cousins, they had all gathered together in the house in Godregraig. Now, Godregraig is the village where you might have heard about the moving mountain in the Swansea Valley, where on a few occasions rain has sort of caused the mountain to slip and taken houses away. Anyway, my grandparents' house, they built it at the turn of the 20th century with their own hands. You know, they just all gathered together, a bit like in America, where you get all the community coming together to whack up a barn. Well, the family got together and built this house, and it's a nice big 4-bedroom house. So they were all there for a birthday party. And my dad was shattered, lying on my grandmother's lap as the festivities were sort of going on. And my great-grandmother was still alive at that time, and she had the front room to herself. And the front room, it was a double-fronted, windowed bedroom. And in the middle of these two windows was a big terracotta urn. Massive thing now, so big that my dad at 7 years of age could hide in it. And this thing weighed a ton. It took 2 adults to carry it. And the windows were opposite the door, so there was sort of 12-foot gap between this and the door to the bedroom. And the festivities were going on, and they were all getting merry. And then all of a sudden, they heard this bumping upstairs in the bedroom. Nobody was up there. So being the brave Williams family that they were, they got 6 of the men together to go up to check on what had caused the noise. So they got to the door, and my dad said he stood on the stairs to watch them doing this. And they put their shoulders to the door because it would not move. And a couple of them pushed and shoved, and eventually, anyway, the door gave way and they heard a crash. And when they actually pushed through the door, they could see the urn was in pieces right in front of the door. So it had somehow moved from the wall to block the door. And there was no one in there. And as I said, it took 2 people, 2 grown men to carry the thing. So that's another true one. That's what my dad told me.
Yes, that's yeah. I mean, you wouldn't spend much time in that house after that. I mean, I tend to.
No, I hated it.
I mean, I tend to fall on the believing side more than anything else. I don't have any particular evidence why. I mean, the only apart from stuff with kids, you know, like in the last book when I wrote about the Marston house, you know, and the daring to go to a haunted house and all that. But the one I remember, I don't remember how old I was. I must have been in my last years of my teens, maybe, because I was driving. And I know Mum and Dad and my sister had gone on holiday. And I had the house in Cumberbatch to myself probably for the first time. And I was driving back, and the house is on a hill, and you kind of drive up and you swing into the driveway. And as I was coming up to swing into the driveway, when I looked up, there was in the front bedroom window. Clear as day, clear as I can see you now. So, big brave boy, obviously, out of the car, in the front door, picked up a walking stick. One of my grandfather's old walking sticks was left there. And I went up the stairs and I thought, well, wherever you are, you're having a battering. And there was nobody up there. And I went through all the cupboards. I went under the beds, anything you can think of, you know, paranoid now. There's somebody in the house. Couldn't find anybody. Nobody in there. It was cold. It was cold. Anyway, so I thought, well, the place is empty. I came back downstairs and I remember walking into the kitchen. And as I walked into the kitchen, my mother had a Welsh dresser and it was right there, sort of by the door. And when I looked, there was a picture in the Welsh dresser of my father's parents. And they passed away years and years before this. And when I saw my grandfather in that picture, I realized who was in that window. As soon as I saw it, I knew that was him stood in that window.
Yeah,
Never happened again.
it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. That's just giving me the shivers.
And,
The thought of that.
You know,
but it
when I
never bothered me, Nigel, after. Do you know what I mean? It's not like I had a sleepless night. And
No.
I didn't feel threatened or scared in any way. And it never bothered me with that house at all. But yeah, as soon as I saw his picture, I knew that was him. And it was a very strange experience, but I can't explain it.
No.
And haven't had an experience like it. But
supernatural, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's
Well, is it that, or is it anything else? I mean, I'm sure science would be able to explain a lot of it, but you can't really explain seeing your grandfather's face in the window if you hadn't seen it before, and then recognizing it in a photograph afterwards. That takes a bit of explaining.
Yeah.
Genetic memory, maybe. I don't know. Maybe there are things that will come out in future that
a friend of mine spoke to me many years ago about a son, right? And she was quite serious about it. She said, Arthur, what do you think of this? I said, what, you know? She said, my boy, she said, I've seen my mother in the bedroom. Now, he wasn't born when, you know, he'd never seen his grandmother. And he was in bed one night and got up in the morning and he said to me, I think I saw Granny last night. And she said, what do you mean you saw Granny last night? She hovered over the bed. And he described her, right? And I said to her, I said, well, you've got to believe him. Obviously, you don't say I don't believe you. You've got to sort of try to find what sort of explanation. And like Nigel said about you, now if you haven't seen your grandfather, then you see him, you think, what's going on here? But he described her, and that's the room she died in, the grandmother. Okay, and she explained to me about her boy. Then he had a few things wrong with him. He was dyslexic. He had dyspraxia, this type of thing. So I often wonder, it like it says about that young boy who paints from memory, doesn't he? He sees an image, and the next minute he's drawn it. It's unbelievable. It is. He's phenomenal. He is. It's as if they've got a higher intelligence. So I don't know whether or not that plays a part in this sort of seeing things. I don't know.
It could do. I mean, there's, you know, people talk about kids having imaginary friends, don't they?
Yeah.
And you know, maybe it's something that you have and you grow out of it. But I mean, Nigel said something then.
Or a doll, Ross.
Or a doll, the worst. Oh, I'll tell you about when we went to the cinema. Took my sister to see Jaws a couple of years back. Yeah, when we came out, know the Annabelle doll from the Annabelle movie. Now my sister's terrified of that doll.
Oh,
and when we came out, there was a photographer outside, and they had the doll there, right? And you can have your picture taken with a doll. So I made my sister have her picture taken with the Annabelle doll. I've never seen anyone so terrified in my life. But
well, that is.
Yeah, that's evil. But you touched on something earlier, Nigel. I mean, the idea of what is supernatural, and you know and science is going to do something, because what we call ghosts now, in 20 years' time, depending on where science goes, that might not be ghosts anymore.
Yeah.
Probably will become something else. But I mean, and to your story, Arthur, you know, people seeing. I mean, I know a story a friend of mine told me about a woman, and her mother died in old age, you know, and in the last sort of 10 years of her life, her and her mother just argued. Her mother started psychologically to unravel, and it made her quite a bitter, nasty person. And they argued and they argued. and the last conversation they had was an argument. And the mother was nasty to the daughter, you know, in everything. And when she died, for weeks after the mother died, the woman just kept having nightmares, you know, because it was unfinished and they'd fought and all this. And she said something similar. The one night she opened her eyes and her mother was leaning over her, over the bed, and there was no words, and they kind of looked at each other, and it was kind of like, it's okay. And it was almost like we forgive each other, and then that was it. And she never dreamt about her mother again.
Yeah, it's a really odd thing, because this idea of genetic memory, maybe you know, when you think of it, we're all made up out of atoms, yeah, and the atoms are the code to everything that we see around us. You know, they form the tables, they form the chairs, they form all sorts of life. Everything is full of atoms. And I think of sometimes, I know this sounds a bit daft, but it is a spooky program after all.
Yes.
If you think of microchips holding information, the atoms hold information, obviously. And I just wonder sometimes, because when we die, all our atoms disperse again, and they become other things. They make up other things around us. So do they then go into someone else, or parts of them go into someone else? Do they carry some of this stored memory with them? Is this deja vu, or I just don't know. But it's I'm sure one day science will work it all out, but not in my time, I don't think.
I mean, there's that what they call stone tape theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that houses will hold memories and replay events
and sounds. Yeah.
And sounds. You know, I mean, maybe that's along the lines of what you're saying there. You know,
yeah, well, atoms again.
Yeah, do we leave impressions on the buildings that we're in?
Yeah. And of course, everything's vibrating. You know, everything around us. All our atoms are vibrating all the time. You know, you look at a window and you don't think that that's liquid. You know, the glass is liquid, that it's actually moving, and very, very slowly, that glass is moving towards the bottom, or the atoms are moving towards the bottom, and excuse me, you can't see it, but it's happening on a microscopic level. So there are things that we take for granted, we don't even think about. But when you actually stop and wonder about these things, you realize how much we don't know, and I think that makes it far more interesting. But going back to that house with the urn, I never liked it there. Even from a small child, before I heard about this story, because my dad told me this, or when I was in my teens, I suppose. But when I was little, there was a shed around the back of the house, and a small little enclosed courtyard with high walls around it. And then the garden was on a slope leading up to this moving mountain. And I would never go in that shed. I just had this strange feeling there. I wouldn't go into the courtyard. Everything felt bad, or something was wrong there. And my grandmother's brother, Reese, had gone off in the First World War to fight and never came back, blown up in a trench. You know, they never recovered anything of him. And my grandmother was only small at the time. She was born in 1912, so she was probably only about 6 when Reese died. And he left that house to go off to war, and he never returned. And I wonder, was he making his presence felt? But I just never liked being in there. Never liked it at all. Scared me.
So do you think when we go that we come back?
Well, I don't know about that.
I mean, I don't believe in reincarnation, and I didn't believe it when I was a frog.
Well, I want to come back as a bestseller.
Will you?
That's what I want to come back as. I changed my name. Nobody know I am. You know what I mean? But no, being serious, we don't know, do we?
No, we don't.
We'll never know, will we?
Well, we will.
Yeah, or will we? Yeah.
No, I don't think we will we? We'll never know. Like, I'm going to be cremated, I am, so I'll end up as atoms, millions and billions of them. So, I don't know.
Well, they've got to end up somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know. It's I never I never dismiss anybody who says they've seen something or heard something or whatever. I've never dismissed it, even when I was in the job. It's like when you interview people and they hear voices in their heads and stuff, and people are telling me to do things. See, you know what I mean? I got tinnitus, right, which would drive you mad. I don't take any notice of it. It doesn't have. It's there all the time. It's a high-pitched noise. It is, but because I'm doing this, I can't hear it. I watch the telly, don't hear it. When I'm writing, I don't hear it. The only time I hear it is when I go to bed. But I can imagine somebody having voices in their head. Do you understand me? Whether it be bad voices or good voices or whatever. You know what I mean? I often think to myself, how did they get in there? What in the brain is causing that? Because as you know, our brain, I don't know how much we use of it, but it's very minuscule, isn't it? It's nothing like our brain, is there? You know what I mean? They can invent all the machines they like, but there's nothing.
No, it's incredible. It's incredible thing. But no, I think you're right. There's I don't know. I mean, I guess one of the big questions: would you want to come back? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, we don't know, do we? We don't know. I mean,
we don't know. People talk about UFO. I watch it on UFOs. People seeing UFOs and things moving about. You know what I mean? They go on about the planets and space. God knows what's out there. I don't know. You know what I mean? We'll never find out. I don't think we will. I think we'll never find out. It's too vast. It's too.
I heard a brilliant quote about. I mean, I tend to. I think it's arrogant to think that we're alone in the universe. To be honest, I'm not saying it's little green men, but I think there must be something somewhere. But I heard a guy. He gave a great. I can't remember his name, and he said, when you look at the part of the universe that we've explored, and we haven't found any evidence of extraterrestrial life. And he said, by using that and then saying there's no such thing as aliens, he said that's like dipping your toe in the ocean somewhere and wondering why it's not shark infested.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Of course you don't.
We don't know. I mean,
it's like this COVID business, isn't it? You got one professor saying this, and you got one professor saying that, totally rebutting each other. This testing business now with the PC, what do you call it, PCE or whatever it is. When you look at the bloke who actually invented it, he had the Nobel Prize for it, American fella. Even he's dead now. He died last year, but even he is saying that the test which he invented, the PC, I think it's called, that he invented, wouldn't find this out. This COVID, it wasn't developed for that, and yet they're using it as a sort of tester. And some are saying no, it shouldn't be used. Some are saying yes, it's the finest thing since sliced bread. So when you talk about aliens and little green men, who do you believe? Do you believe Stephen Hawking? I don't know. Or the other professors about space. No, I'm like you. I do believe that there is not only us out there, personally.
Well, I mean, I hope there's intelligent life out there because there's none on this planet.
Well, no, we went on the pan, didn't we? Quietly, we are normally in. You talk about today. This business starting tonight. Like I cannot fathom it out, personally. You got the Welsh team flying from Cardiff. A full side squad of, let's say, how many's in a squad now? 28, 30. Yeah. Plus your hangers on, you're like 45 committee men and anybody else. So you've got an entourage of 80 people from all over Wales, all over the country, flying up to France, flying back in. Now, what do? Do they self-isolate? Nobody can answer you. Because what they say.
I think the reason he's pulled the plug on us today is because of tomorrow, because of the international tomorrow. Can you imagine the pubs full of people watching the rugby?
And
it would be chaos.
And also Halloween, bonfire night, they finish. So the way we're carrying on, Christmas could be cancelled.
Don't say that now. Don't say that.
Well, it's the way it's going. But what I'm saying is,
Christmas special.
It's like anything else. It's gone to such a stage now. Who do you believe?
Well, credibility is confidence half the time. So as long as you say something confidently, you're credible.
Well,
yeah, that's true.
And you're right. There's so many different points of view, and people differ. I just really hope this time that everyone just follows the rules, and let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, then you hold them accountable. Then, I mean, personally, I can't see 2 weeks making a massive difference. But we don't know. We don't know. And sometimes reality is scarier than anything you see on a film, right?
Well, it is scary. You can make a film, write a book about it, couldn't you?
Mm.
Yeah, I think somebody has. I was just going to say, let's get back to something far more serious. I've got another ghost story for you.
Oh, go. Love him.
Right. This one, again, told by my dad, who didn't believe in this sort of stuff. Anyway, my dad was quite useful with his hands. What I mean by that is that give him a saw, give him a hammer and a nail, and he could have a stab at anything. He wasn't quite Norm Abrams from New Yankee Workshop, but he'd have a go at anything. He'd make anything. And before I get on to the ghost story, I've got to tell you this. My dad always used to make my Christmas presents for me, and he'd do it on behind the settee.
Well, that's the place to do it, isn't it? Let's be fair.
Well, he'd do everything behind the settee because he didn't have a workshop. So he'd cover it over with a sheet to stop me seeing it. And he made this castle, okay? And he made it out of plywood, and he covered it with plaster of Paris. And this thing was spectacular, probably 4 feet square. And it looked like Castell Coch. It was an amazing thing, right?
You must have had a big settee, Nigel.
Sorry?
You must have had a big settee.
Yeah, well, it was a fair size. Anyway, anyway, he'd finished this thing. By the time the plaster had set, he couldn't lift it. So when he came to Christmas morning, he had to take the sheet off, showed me the castle. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. Wow, fantastic. I had all these little toys to go with it. He said, the only thing is, he said, you'll be playing with that until you're 18 behind the settee because it's not going anywhere. And that's a true story. You just couldn't move it anywhere. Anyway, he made this music box. He bought this little wind-up music box tune thing that you can fit into the box, lift the lid, you get a little ballet dancer pop up, and it would play a tune. Well, my dad's cousin, she was something like 15 or 16 years younger than him, and he had made this music box now for Mair, who had the leukemia, and he had just finished it. Mair had gone into hospital for some more treatment, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, this music box was on the bedside table, and he was going to give it to her next time she came out of hospital. The music box started playing. When he got up in the morning, he found out that Myra had died at that time in a hospital in Port Talbot. True story.
Well, there's loads of stories like that. I am sure when people listen to this, will probably say to themselves, yeah, something like that's happened to me. Something like that's happened to me.
Stick them in the comments underneath,
Yes, you know, people read it, put the comments, or because there's material in there for Nigel to write another horror book. It's like anything else, you know.
You say like, I'm nicking it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. It's deja vu, I call it. I mean, I've used. It's like I don't know if you're the same with your wives and that. I can be sitting here writing, and I say to Caroline something, and she go, "I'm just thinking of that as well." You know, I don't know. It's because we've been living together for so long, or whatever. You're on like the same sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The wavelength, or whatever they call it. But it's a regular thing. I can be sitting here and I make a cup of tea, and she goes, "Oh, I was just going to make one." or little things, you know what I mean. So I often wonder if there is a transference of thought. I don't know.
Psychic energy could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you were saying earlier, but it's like a fingerprint. How easy it is to leave a fingerprint, and if we are vibrating, as you say, if we are, sharing this sort of psychic energy. I mean, is it possible?
What's happening here? Sorry about that, boys. What's happening here?
I said something.
Well, I
fast.
knew that was going to happen.
How do you know that?
I felt
Oh,
it.
you saw that, did you? You can edit
Yeah,
that out. You can edit it out.
No, I'll just leave it all in now.
Yeah, why not?
I tell you, the most
I didn't press that button. That just come on. That did.
That's spooky.
I haven't touched it. Spooky. I haven't touched it.
All right, I'll believe you. But no, I was saying the most terrified I've ever been, genuinely. This is a story actually. Is that we were living in Cumbar, and it was me, my mother, and my sister. We were quite young, very young. Must have been mid-80s, so I've been 10, 11, something like that. And my father had gone away on a training course. He was away over the first time he'd been away overnight. And we were sitting there. My mother used to love a scary movie, so we sat and we watched John Carpenter's The Fog.
Oh, I like that.
Right. And it scared the living shit out of me, right? As it did my mother, and my sister was in bed, I think, but we were terrified. And we were sat in the house, and actually it was a foggy night outside as well. And then my mother turned to me and she said, did we shut and lock the garage door? And neither of us could remember. And then it was a case of, well, somebody's going to have to go out and do it. No. So she picked up the phone and she rang my uncle, who lived in Glenboyne in Mountain Ash. I said, will you come up and shut the garage door? Because we were genuinely terrified inside. Genuinely terrified. That's true. And I still love that film today.
Well, as a youngster, that's the way it was, wasn't it? You know what I mean? You'd have something in your head and your mother or father would say, go and do this. I said, I can't do that, Mum. I'm going to go there.
Well, my niece is doing it now. So we're all about kids and how they used to see things. So my sister lost her cat recently, but she passed away old age. And a couple of times now, my niece Georgia will put a plate on the floor, and so what are you doing? She says, food for Frankie the cat. Or she'll sit there like that. Oh, I can. Oh, there's Frankie.
Yeah.
And my sister's the bloody heebie-jeebies over it.
Yeah. But
you don't know, do you? You don't know what they're seeing.
Of course you don't.
Well, my wife Caroline, one New Year's Eve, we always used to have parties, either in our house or next door. On this particular New Year's Eve, we'd had a few pints, and our youngest daughter Kira was quite small at the time. In fact, she was only about a year old, something like that. So Caroline brought her back in here now because she was tired. It was getting on a bit. And she was sitting on Caroline's lap on the settee, and then all of a sudden, Kira just turned her head as if she's looking at something in the corner of the room. And Caroline said it terrified her because it she could see her looking at something. You know, her eyes were fixed on a spot. And the dog does the same thing occasionally as well.
Dogs and cats.
The dog will just sit up and he'll look at a same point actually that Caroline saw Kira looking, and the dog will look at it and start barking or will start looking agitated. It's really strange, as if there's something that we can't see.
Yeah.
Very, very highly sensitive dogs are very, very, very,
Bit
very
like me.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
sensitive.
But I don't know.
I don't think anybody's going to sleep after this podcast, boys.
No, definitely not.
Ooh, there he is, look.
Here he is.
Oh, he's
blind as well.
He's blind. He's that dog is blind. He's diabetic. He's a medical phenomenon.
Yes. He's epileptic.
He's epileptic. Yeah, he's.
Oh, bless
gone
him.
through the wars.
He's brilliant. Fair play for him. All the things he got wrong with him. Very affectionate.
He is. He's great.
The dog, not you, Nigel.
Yeah, I knew that.
All right.
What's his name?
Zach.
Zach.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great link. Look, because the guys on television, the Ghost Hunters boys, their leader's named Zach.
Yeah, well, there we are.
There we are.
Named after my dog.
There we are. There's a link.
Zachary.
They I love all that on television, right? When they go into these haunted houses and stuff like that. But what I don't understand is how they get scared. Because to me, if you're going into a room to find a ghost and there's a noise or you see something, that means you found the ghost. That means you were going in and you found exactly what you were looking for. So the whole thing, yeah. So why then scream and run away? I've got no idea whatsoever.
Do you believe in spiritualism then?
Yes.
Nigel?
I'm not sure.
Let me tell you. I'll tell you about a friend of mine, right? Who I worked for many, many years, right? My phone rings. He retired as well. Gone. He said, I answer the phone. I go, how's it going? All right. What do you want? And he goes, how's your health? I think, yeah, no problem. He said, I'm going to tell you something now. He said, and tell me what you think about it. I said, what's that? He said, I'm a spiritualist. He said, I think his mother was a spiritualist. I said, so what? Like, what? He said, well, what do you think of me? I said, I never ever liked you. I never ever. I said, what are you talking about? What do you think of you? I said, you're a tidy bloke. I said, I've known you for donkey's years. Yeah, but what do you think of me now? I've told him I'm a spiritualist. I said, well, it'll make no difference to me what you are.
No.
Well, wouldn't he know what you think of him anyway?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said that. Good? I said that to him.
You're ringing me for the lottery numbers or what?
That's right. So he said, no. He said, nobody knew about it in the job. He said, you're the first bloke I've told. And I said, and then he starts telling me about it. He goes all over the place, right? To these meetings, right? And he've actually told me he's seen people like a cavalier and things like that. This type of thing. I don't disbelieve him. This is a bloke.
Vauxhall Cavalier?
Huh?
Vauxhall Cavalier.
That's right. But I don't disbelieve him. Do you understand me? I could never say to him, it's a load of crap. It's a load of rubbish. Because he is adamant. He tells me this out of the blue.
Well, I think it goes back to, you talked about the brain earlier, and they say the sixth sense, don't they? So maybe there is a thing. I mean, we know now, like we live in a world, right, where there's dogs now, because the dogs is remind, but there's dogs that can smell cancer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's one dog at the moment, apparently, that can smell COVID.
Yeah.
And they're training these dogs in airports and stuff to smell illnesses on people. I mean, that must it's a completely new sense. So maybe, I think these people fall into the pitfalls of a lot of other things. It's like the Loch Ness Monster, right? People ask me if I believe in the Loch Ness Monster. I will say yes, 100%. I believe there's something living in that loch. Now, I'm not saying it's a dinosaur, right? I'm saying there's something in that loch that cannot be explained, right? But there's been so many fakes and frauds and forgeries that actually takes away from what's really going on. And I think with spiritualists, there are guys, I think, that genuinely are sensing something. Now, you can argue maybe it's their own imagination working overtime, or maybe they are receiving some sort of energy vibe from somewhere that, that we don't, because that part of our brain doesn't work, or we don't have that sense. But again, it kind of goes back to what Nigel was saying. Is it what will science say that is in 20, 30, 40 years?
When you talk about the physicality of it all, like you talk about the Loch Ness Monster, it's come down over the years. It's a dinosaur. It's this, it's that. So if I said to you the other day, I saw on the telly a 9-foot trout, would you believe me?
Well, I believe you.
9-foot trout.
He'd believe me.
I believe Nigel. I believe you.
Well, I watched the fishing program. It's called Monster Fishing.
You've
Right?
had 5 pints of cider again. You better cut it out.
Monster Fishing. I think it was in Vietnam or somewhere. This fella, he's looking for this monster trout.
Yeah.
And he caught it. It was 9 foot long, right? Honestly, now it was unbelievable. And it's a proper trout. It's got the markings on it. It's got the colouring and everything. It's got an head on it like that. And it's basically a predator where it's living.
Yeah.
So I think you come back to the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, there's got to be something there, isn't it? Good God. It's so massive, the lake is. You know, the loch is so big. You know, who knows?
It is enormous.
It's enormous.
Well,
So
it's 25 miles long. It's about, on average, a mile wide, and there's more water in it than all the lakes of England and Wales put together.
Yeah,
Well,
it's over a mile deep, isn't it?
you look at you look at the research underwater, under the oceans. They're finding species now that we never knew existed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I saw a documentary about the Mariana Trench.
Oh,
You know, and it wasn't that long ago that we were saying that there's nothing alive down there, because the light can't get down there. There's no photosynthesis. Nothing can survive down there.
Oh, Jason Statham has proved it. There is.
That's
light
right.
down there because
It's great.
he's been down through that cloudy stuff at the bottom there.
The
And he's seen a big
thermocline.
shark.
The thermocline, yes, the megalodon shark.
That's
But
right.
I mean, but all that down there, I mean, the chenosynthesis, I think they call it, don't they? It's the same process, but it's an absence of light. So we don't know. We're finding these things all the time, and you know, science is moving and moving and moving, and it's who knows? Like what we say now, ghosts.
yeah. I remember the first time I took Caroline up to Cairo to meet my parents. Right, the fog was down and it was drizzling, and Caroline is adamant that she saw a dinosaur in the mist.
Probably got the bus over from Ricos.
Yeah, because it's like the world where time stood still up there. You know, the dinosaurs. What do you call it? What's that film with all the dinosaurs? What do you call it?
Land the tank.
Jurassic Park. Well, you could have filmed that up in Cairo when the mist was down. You know, it's unbelievable. Eerie. So,
Doug McClure living next door to you.
yeah, so you know what I mean? Say, for example, I took your niece up there one day when it's like that, and I started telling the stories about, you know, up in the mountain by the forestry, you know, they got it would probably stick in her head. You know, she'd probably have some kind of image there.
Well,
And I think
She's
that's
damaged for life now.
she'd be damaged for life. Right?
Yeah.
I think that type of thing, our minds, our imagination is so intense on occasions. You know, I mean,
She loves. She's probably my fault. One of my favorite stories around this time of year, and it's not really any of the films. I love reading the book. It's only a short story, which is the Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving.
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect ghost story. Perfect ghost story. And when Georgia was very young, when she was a baby, and she wouldn't go to sleep. And I love audiobooks. I love listening to audiobooks. And I've got a great version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and it's read by an English actor, Tom Myson. And I was there one day, and Catherine, my sister, was going, I can't get her to sleep. And I said, try this. And he's got a very soft, mellow voice. And he just tells the story. And she went to sleep. And then Catherine tried it again and again. And every time, Georgia just went to sleep. And as she's grown up now, she loves it. She's seen the Headless Horseman in Scooby-Doo. And I remember the Headless Horseman in stories my father used to read me from the Roy Rogers and the Range and those annuals. And there was always a headless cowboy and all that sort of stuff. But Georgia loves it as much as I do. And I love it. So around this time of year, I like to read it. And sometimes when Georgia wants a story from me, I'll tell her about the time I went to Sleepy Hollow and what I saw. You know, and so they love it. I mean, she loves Scooby-Doo, like old Scooby-Doo from the 60s and 70s.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like the modern stuff. She likes the old stuff.
Well, my daughter Karen, music-wise, like some of her friends, she mentions groups and stuff and singers, and they know what she's talking about, because she was brought up with the music, my music and Caroline's music, which is like music of the 60s and 70s. So when you get like 50 years later and she's playing it, like, and people saying, who's that? You know what I mean? it's the way they are, isn't it? It's they're sponges there. Kids are, they like sponges. You know?
Yeah,
What's
that's
your favorite book around this time of year? We mentioned the Rats. I assume it's not the James Herbert,
Well,
which is
my favourite book around this year.
Yeah, have you got a spooky story, a spooky book? I know you don't read much.
No, I got nothing like that. I haven't.
Go to the circus or
No, like I say, I wrote a few poems, obviously, but no, you know me, Nigel. I don't read. I got a very low threshold when it comes to reading. Writing's different, but like I tell, I don't even read the books we write. Truth be told, but no. So I know Nigel.
I can recommend this one. This is a crack.
Oh yes, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, well, he hasn't read that one either.
I mean, look, I can't. Who wrote that? It's a look.
This is my very treasured signed copy. This is. I got a signed.
Hang on a minute. Is that that's the ice cream bloke from Struggle, that is?
That's him. Yeah.
That's right.
Makes ice cream.
Get it? He's ice cream. Yeah.
No,
Right.
you mean it's
yeah.
pointless asking me.
Well, I'm big into James Herbert. I've always loved his stuff. I like Stephen King, but Herbert was always consistent for me. Anything he did, really. Magic Cottage, the Ghost of Crickley Hall, Survivor, Fluke. Fluke was a bit of an odd one for him, really. But having been speaking about reincarnation and stuff, I suppose it does fit in with the theme, because that's about a guy who's either a dog or a dog who thinks he's a guy. It's something along that was the strap line, I think. But yeah, I like them all, really. I've read them all. I think I'm going to go back and read Survivor over this weekend. I really like that. That's the one that really switched me on to James Herbert to start with, because of the connections with my brother being in college in Egham at the time, and the aircraft comes down in Windsor, and that starts the story, the 747 crash, and it's a really good book. Some typically Herbert scary moments in it, and I think that goes back to about 1977, 78, something like that.
Definitely late 70s, I think. Late 70s.
So what about you, Ross? You were sort of...
I think there'll definitely be a Hammer movie at some point over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I'm gonna have one of those.
Yeah, definitely a bit of Hammer, a bit of Christopher Lee.
Well, I love watching the... I watch a lot of TCM and Talking Pictures. I love the black and whites. So I've no doubt I will be watching sort of a few horror ones on there, like, which I enjoy. I'd rather watch it than read it personally.
Yeah, I love probably one of my favorites around this time of year I go to is An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
I know that's more of a black comedy, but it's got its scares, you know. When I was a kid and that was on television, I had a little portable television in my bedroom, not very big, one of the first TVs, you know, big fat TV. And I nagged my parents because I wanted to watch. It was on Channel 4 about 10 o'clock at night. And they were both like, "You're too young, you're not watching it, go to bed." And so I went in the bedroom, and you know, being the little shit I was, I got up and I turned the television on, and I had it on really low, and I had my face up to the screen like this, right, well, this far from the screen. And there's a couple of significant jumps in our film, right?
Yeah.
I didn't get past when they were on the moors in the beginning. That first attack.
Yeah.
Telly was off. The duvet was up to here. I was like, it's fine, I'll leave it. So
the
yeah,
cinema scene is good. Yeah, the cinema scene where he's sitting alongside him, starting to fall to bits.
But yeah, I mean, I love that. If I feel a bit, you know, classical, I'll pull out the old Universal monsters, you know, a bit of Bela Lugosi and stuff like that. I love all those. They're creaky and you know, there's just something about them.
I love all the black and white films. I do.
Yeah.
The cowboy films. I love them. I do. I think brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
But yeah, stuff like that. I'll probably listen to. You know, we'll have a bit of Purple People Eater. We'll have a bit of The Devil Went Down to Georgia. You know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I mean, you'll be too busy, Arthur. There'll be kids knocking on the door asking for tricks or treats and whatever.
God help him.
Let me tell you, they've been on my door. I'm telling you straight. I'm self-isolating, I am. I am. I can't answer that door. I'm self-isolating, man. What's happening here? But no,
voices coming from the coal house again.
That's right, from the coal outside. Domestic at the coal house. I wrote, funny thing, I wrote a poem about my mother and father, domestic at the coal house.
Oh.
Yeah, when he was chasing her with down the path with that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary. You know, there's a scary story, you know, right? Talking about scary.
Well, wrap it up for us with a crack.
It goes back to, when they say children get damaged in childhood, things happen which traumatizes them. It's post-traumatic today, and that's what it's called today. Well, we were out the back lane one day. I must have been about 5. Norman would be and Billy be a bit old out the back lane playing. And as you know, at the time, there were a lot of domestics. My father never laid a hand on my mother, but you saw tremendous barneys. Unbelievable. You won't believe it, right? Because she was as bad as him, you know. He was very quiet, my father, but she was a real sort of collier's wife. Unbelievable. And I heard all this noise, see, this commotion. And it's my mother running down the path, and she goes into the outside toilet at the bottom of the garden. And who's running behind her is my father with hatchet. Wielding his hatchet, see?
Right.
And she's screaming at him, and he's screaming at her. And then he starts chopping the door down of the toilet. You know, real. It's like something out of a film, you know. Chop,
Stephen
chop.
King.
Yeah, chop, chop, chop. He's calling her or everything, and she's saying to him something like, "Come on, then, chop my head off. Come on, chop my head off." Right? Chop, chop, chop. And he's chopping at the door. Well, the next minute now, Alan the copper turns up. Who lived down the road. Everybody knew him. Alan, my father, big friends with my father. And he's there now, and he looks at my father, like my father's out of the hatchet, like this. "Here comes Johnny," you know, with the eyes. And he says to me, "Billy, put the hatchet down, will you?" My father goes, chucks on the floor. Then my mother comes out the toilet. And she says to him, the policeman, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, why don't you go off," she said to him. Right? And off he goes. My mother and father then have a big cut then, kissing, and back up the path. Now, that affected me for the rest of my life. Post-traumatic stress. You know what I mean? There was nothing like it, was it? But that's the way it was years ago in the valleys. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But so that's probably a frightening thing. I suppose at the time I didn't realise how frightening it was.
Mm.
But again, that never affected us. I tell it as a story because and when I tell people, say, "Nah," I'm telling you, it happened. Not that my father would ever laid a finger on her, right? You know,
Yeah.
If she'd come out, he'd have, you know. But yeah. So I suppose you could call that a traumatic experience. I don't know.
Yeah, you could. A friend of mine, Bernard, who's from Perth Celyn, and he said when they were in school in Perth Celyn, right, they were that tough. They used to play touch with hatchets.
Brilliant. You know what I mean? But you could turn that into a story, couldn't you? Into like a sort of.
Stephen King has done it, mate.
Stephen
King has already done it.
An anthology coming along here, boys.
What did he do that in the hatchet then? What was that?
What's that now, bud?
Stephen King.
Aye, what book is that?
Well, it's not in the book. It's in the film. It's in the film. It's The Shining, in the film The Shining.
Yes, Jack Nicholson. But this is like sort of.
It's a croquet stick in the book, I think, or a polo.
You could take that back years because in the valleys, then don't get me wrong, my mother and father, like, they had so many barneys, it's unbelievable. But never ever laid a finger on her. Ever. Which is And then you try to balance it up. Well, how can you chase it down with that shit? And, you know, today now, he'd have chopped her head off, wouldn't he? Many would have chopped her head, or whatever, you know, as soon as she go whack with the hatchet. But, and, what's that? Oh,
Something else happening now, is it?
oh, gosh, happening.
Right, gentlemen. It's been a terrifyingly glorious. He's got it. I love that.
I wish he'd stop ringing this bloke, whoever he is. Stop ringing, man.
It's your spiritualist friend. He knows you're talking about him.
Aye, probably. That went off. No, I haven't touched it.
Oh,
No, I knew that was going to happen too.
Went off on its own.
it's an X-file. It's an X-file.
Yeah.
Right, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh.
Thank you, Ross.
Tell anybody who's watched it all the way through, listen to this madness. Stories underneath.
Well, anybody who watched this all the way through must be psychologically flawed.
Well, they are now. They are now.
They must be thinking, who are those three idiots? Well, it's all right for him because he got a pseudonym, you know.
Well,
he can hide behind the pseudonym Russ Garrity.
Well, if you're right, I think Nigel Williams is a plonker 1,000 times under this, right? The next podcast, you go, yeah, the name's Russ Garrity. Well, you just wear a hat, a pair of glasses, and a false moustache.
Right. I've got it ready.
Good man.
But,
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thanks,
Cheers,
Nige. Mr. Cole, always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure talking to the pair of you.
And,
You do, I must say, you do enlighten me, and it's quite obvious that I'll have to get into the books.
well,
Fill
read
your
some.
heart with joy.
You are?
Fill your heart with joy.
Read something that isn't waterproof and chewable, and then we'll see. Gentlemen, adios. Thank you very
All
much.
the best, boss.
Cheers.
All the best, Nige.
All the best.
Making
Ross.
your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where people can see your troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows